Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Uncommon Comedy Podcast. I am your host, Brian Apprille. And as always, you can follow us at Uncommon Comedy on Facebook, at Uncommon Comedy Tour on Instagram, and on YouTube at Uncommon Comedy Podcast. Very excited about my guest today. We actually went out of the country today to bring in somebody who's performed all over the world. The first time I met him was at a fundraising show, so you know he's a good guy. And very, very funny. Great actor and an incredible comedian. So let's please bring him in. Welcome the one, the only Mr. Leland Klassen. Leland, how are you, sir?
Good. I'm bowing in case anyone is clapping.
Oh, trust me, they're cheering and they're clapping like mad.
Good. Hey, by the way, I love that 1980s guitar shredding in your intro.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Somebody was shredding that up.
Well, you know, I had to come up with my own, thing because otherwise the copywritten music and all that. So I just did a little program, and that's who I am. 80s guitar.
Is that your? So give me. Sorry, I don't mean to derail.
No.
But I do want to ask, who is like? Were you like Poison guy, or were you Bon Jovi, or were you harder than that?
Yeah, it was a little bit. I do a little bit of everything. I go back to classic rock from like Aerosmith and all that. I do Stevie Ray Vaughan and all that.
Okay.
So I do all of that, but then for 80s, there was 70s Kiss, The Who and all that, Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Poison, Slaughter, Motley Crue. I was into Metallica. I even went pretty hard into Suicidal Tendencies and things like that. So I went all over the place.
The band, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, during 7th and 8th grade, no.
Right.
I was really into them. No. So I love all sorts of hair bands, Winger, and
I love the 80s metal. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally down with what is your favorite 80s metal band?
I mean, I got to go with Stryper just because that was my jam back in the day. But I liked all Poison, Motley Crue. I liked all the glam bands. Everyone was like, these guys with their hair.
They look like girls.
Yeah. I was like, hey, but it's good music. There's some harmony and some guitar. I think I'll take it both, please.
And some ballads, rock ballads. I was a big Def Leppard fan, huge Def Leppard fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, Stryper was always funny. Yellow and Black.
Yellow and Black Attack, baby.
Yep.
When I get in a car and it's got Sirius XM radio, I always go to 39. I don't know if it's different in the US, but in Canada, that's Hair Nation, baby.
Yep. Hair Nation. That's the one. I love
Hair
that channel.
Yeah.
We could talk all about hair metal. Forget comedy. We're talking hair metal now.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into comedy.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Because I'll talk hair metal all day. Winger, like I said, just,
Dude, Firehouse,
Love of a Lifetime, Trickster, Kicks, Jane's, not Jane's Addiction. Who did Ballad of Jane? LA Guns.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Then obviously Guns N' Roses came out, end of the 80s and just kind of morphed it and did all that. But yeah, I love
And then stupid grunge started and ruined it all.
I know. I actually didn't listen to grunge for a long time because I was angry. I was very angry that they killed off hair metal.
Yeah, I like some of those early grunge songs. I was like, oh, this is good too.
Yeah.
Then 80s metal went away, and I was like, wait a minute. I didn't know it was one or the other. I would have stuck with that. My
first concert was Brittany Fox, Lita Ford, and Poison.
Okay.
Yeah. So Brittany Fox, all the girls were standing up and cheering, and then Lita Ford came out and all the guys stood up, and then Poison, everybody kind of stood up. So
okay.
But
I did that. Guns N' Roses, I've seen them live. I've seen Stryper, I saw them at a small club. This is years later. The thing about those guys is they did Clean Living, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now they can still just shred it up, and some of these, like, they're amazing even now. And it's like, oh, wow. So good. Yeah.
When you look at what's happened to Warrant or, and Poison and some of the tolls that rock and roll and other things have taken on them. Yeah. There's actually a really cool artist that I just found out. Her name is Mariah Formica, which it's spelled like Formica. She's, I think, 19 years old, and she just shreds. And she actually did some stuff with Stryper. And she was, I guess she was on The Voice when she was 16, and she's just She sounds just like Ann Wilson from Hart, and she sounds like I don't know the lead singer's name, but from Evanescence. So she's got that sound to her.
Yeah, okay.
And she plays guitar, and she can shred on the guitar. And Moriah Formica, Formica. She's amazing. You should check her out.
By the way, Hart is a Canadian band.
Are they really?
Yeah. No.
So
no, they're not. I'm sorry.
You're thinking Corey Hart?
I've actually opened for Corey Hart.
Did you really?
Yeah, he came through Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I was there doing comedy, and they had me open for him for a half hour.
How was that?
I mean, this was past the prime years, right? So, but it was great. It was a great show. He was still delivering. I had a friend, a girl who handed me his cassette, was like, "Hey, can you get him to sign this?" This is the days when CDs were, and she was like, handing me this old busted up cassette, and I just couldn't do it because I was like, "This is insulting to him."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance." But
that's funny. But he says hi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of comics hate opening for musicians because they're very different. Because the crowd is not there for comedy; they're there for music.
Yeah, but this is different than like rock and roll. It's more like this was a whole bunch of ladies from the 80s that were like, "Oh, I love Corey Hart." And they're like, "Hey, listen to this guy for half an hour first." And they're like, "All right." So it wasn't like some of those.
Did they give you it? By the way, Ladies from the 80s sounds like a great bowling team name. But did they give you some sort of introduction? Or did you do? Okay.
I might have even introduced myself backstage with the microphone. And now, please give it up for whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then handed it to him, then walked out and grabbed the mic there. I can't quite remember, but I've done that before. And I think that was one of the times I did it.
Because I know there's so many stories, but they always say, like, if you can get the band to like be like, "Hey, this is our friend," like it totally makes life easier for you.
Yeah.
And
no, it was not one of those kind of hard rocking crowds. They were like we're pretty chill. We just want to hear some Never Surrender and Sunglasses at Night. So if you we're okay with that. Yeah. But I remember that the road manager was just like in my face, and he was like, "Do not go over 30 minutes. Not even 1 second over 30. Is that over 30? Yes, it is. Do not do it." He was just like right up. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. So I got off stage. It was like 28 minutes and I don't know, it's 20 seconds or something. And he's like, "How come you didn't do 30? Because you were in my face. I'm just trying to make sure." He's like, "Well, you didn't." I said, "Don't go over 30. And I was like, "All right, whatever."
Yeah, it's similar to casinos. When you do casinos, they're like that as well. Like, do not go 1 second over because they want people back in, and every minute in the casino they're losing.
That's money. It costs them money.
Exactly. So I had a friend of mine who was a comedian. He actually opened up for a Canadian band, Bare Naked Ladies.
Oh, yeah.
And then he said what was really cool about them, it was during the Christmas season, and during their encore, they sang "Do They Know It's Christmas?" That, and they brought him out to join the band and sing along with them.
Oh, cool.
And usually, I guess Dido was their normal opener, and so when they came out, they're like, "Wow, Dido was much funnier than she was tonight, than normal." So, but that was cool. I was like living vicariously through that. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
They in Canada, they did well when they toured before they were even really known because of their name. It would just say on the marquee, "Bare Naked Ladies," and people were like,
well, this should be a good show. Wait a minute.
This is a musical group. But
okay, well, as long as they're dudes. Okay. False advertisement. So, so one of the things we'll get back to kind of, I met you about a year ago. We did a fundraiser in San Diego for, I think, a transitional housing.
Yeah.
I think it was like that. We had 500 people. It was a great show. And the thing that really impressed me about you was in your act anyway. You're super nice off stage, and then on stage you were extremely funny. And I want to make sure I say this the right way because I don't want it to sound insulting because I don't mean it.
I'm already offended before you say it now. Now you said that, I'm so offended.
Your material catered to everybody. So there were like 8-year-olds in the crowd up to 80-year-olds. and it didn't matter. You didn't change it. And it wasn't like you were playing down to 8-year-olds. You know what I mean? You had material that was written so that an 8-year-old could get it and understand, and an 80-year-old could understand. And it wasn't demeaning to either group or insulting or kind of going, okay, now we're going to do some kid joke. You know, it wasn't anything like that. It was just plain old material that everybody could relate to. And I was like, that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I think part of that is because, first of all, it was the time I started doing comedy in, where they said to you, because back in my days of doing comedy, it was all about, I still do comedy, but when I started, it was appeal to as many people as you can. Nowadays, it's like niche, because there's always a niche audience, and that's great. I think that's a good thing. But the reason that it still worked for me is because you have to be who you are too. And because I'm physical, and I think that's why some of the younger kids, like you say, 8 years old and stuff, they might not get mortgage jokes, but at the end of it, I'm toppling down or something. They're kind of like, this is a funny guy. I'm enjoying this. So I just kind of got lucky in that sense. In the sense, it was like appeal to everyone, and then I was being true to who I was, which helped appeal to everyone. So it kind of, I guess that's the one thing. That's the one thing good about my act.
There's a lot of things about it. The physicality is great, and I think I remember specifically you had the bit about the hands, and I was just like, everybody gets that, no matter where they are in life.
Yeah.
Well, that's not even a camera trick. That's your hand was behind you there. So
no, it's not.
But so it was really cool to see that, because I'm kind of the same. You know, I'm physical. I do the voices. So kids like that, when there are kids in the audience, they may not understand, you know, certain things, but they understand wacky voices or running around and being silly. But the material could stand on its own, that they could grasp it on an intellectual level, but it still was really funny. And it, like I said, it just wasn't demeaning or anything. And that's my biggest takeaway I took from it. I was like, that is just really cool to see. Because
thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So what inspired you to start doing comedy?
You know, I think I was thinking a little about this, a little bit about this week, because I'm asked that a lot, as you are too, as a comedian. You get kind of asked that question a lot, and you know, I jump around to answer different kinds of answers. But I really started to think about it this week a little bit more, and I guess what I realized is that I kind of recognized as a kid the value in making someone laugh. I don't know if I maybe it wasn't even on a conscious level. Maybe it was more of on a subconscious level. But I think I recognized as a kid how it diffuses tense situations, or lightens a mood over here, or does this over. You know what I mean? I think I kind of sense that, and so I've always enjoyed making people laugh. I've always enjoyed that, and I think it's because I recognize that. So when I started to do it for a living, I was like, oh, you can do this. I mean, I can do this on a way wider basis. I can make this my living. So that kind of helped, solidify it for sure.
Were there any specific comedic influences, or?
I had a lot. I mean, I had a lot when I was a kid. We had this drive time. We lived on a farm just outside of Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Canada. And it's all English. And the radio station there every morning would play a little comedy clips, like 5 minutes or whatever, right? And I really enjoyed watching those. And that was like Bob Newhart and, you know, some Gary Shandling and Bill Cosby. I mean, you know, I'm not going to take him off that list just because he's done some things. No, I don't mean some things like it's not. Now I'm getting myself in more trouble. No. He still was an influence then, is all I'm trying to say, right? Regardless of what's happened now. But yeah, I was always kind of had the stand-up influences like that. And so when I started doing stand-up, right around the time I started doing stand-up, I was watching Jim Carrey on In Living Color. And I was like, that is amazing. And then you go back and start watching his stand-up. And he used to do a lot of impression kind of things and stuff. And that was good too. But it was when he decided to just take a departure and do something completely different. That stuff, I don't know if you've seen Unnatural Act, his Showtime special.
Mm-mm.
Oh my goodness, just so much originality. Like now you look at it and you maybe, oh, this isn't that original, but at the time it was groundbreaking. Just the way he would use physicality and mix it. He made fun of the stand-up comedy tropes,
Right.
As he did. Like it was brilliant stuff, really funny, really good stuff. I mean, he's kind of gone crazy now, but he was really funny.
I loved him. He's got a bit. What's it? It's Jimmy Stewart. He's like, he could be super happy about everything, and then he's like, well, look, kids, it's a nuclear holocaust,
nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hysterical, and that always just makes me laugh. And I remember seeing him on like I want to say maybe the HBO Young Comedians showcase or whatever.
Okay.
And he would come out and he'd do his thing because he's double jointed, and he'd have his arm way over here, and he's like, I'm feeling a little weird tonight, and I don't know why. And just the physicality he would do. And you hear the story of him ditching all of his impressions, because I do impressions or whatever, and then he just went up with no material basically, and he said he would just bomb night after night after night and trying to figure it out on stage. And my gosh, that sounds horrifying. Right. Once you have something that works, you're like, I don't want to go back to that pain.
Well, exactly. He was very brave as an artist and I think that's what got him so far. You even look at the story of his groundbreaking Ace Ventura, and he said he'd do it, but only if he could rewrite it, or do it his way. And that was this character he created, because it wasn't supposed to be that crazy.
Right.
And he was like, no, it has to be that crazy. And they were like, okay, here you go. And somebody taking a chance on him like that, and it just blew up. Yeah,
absolutely. And then they launched into The Mask and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. And so good, such a physical performer. And then you talked a little bit about Cosby. I just wanted to touch on that real quick. It's hard as comedians, man. It's sorry, bad choice of words.
I'm sorry to bring you
up. It's hard as comedians because you watch him as a comic, and he is just like the gold standard of storytelling and just stage presence and what he meant to comedy. And then later you find out, okay, he was this monster. But so it's hard. It's almost feels bad to even say like, oh, I like Cosby as an influence. And I had a story. I had written a joke about chess, and then on Cosby last special on Comedy Central, he did a chess joke, and my wife turns to me and she goes, he's going to do your chess bit. And I was like, no. And then we ended up with the same, parallel thinking, ended up with almost the exact same thing, word for word, except I had a couple of tags. And then I was like, cool. It's like, I have this great story to tell that I have, similar thinking to Cosby. And then now I can't say that at all. I'm like, I have no similar thinking to Cosby.
You sicko. Well, that's why it is important, I feel like, in stand-up to be who you are on stage. And so I guess that's one thing. It's like, oh, he wasn't really who he was on stage. He sure did a great version of himself.
Yeah.
It was like, wow. Very skilled, but that wasn't really who he was, right? And so that's why I always kind of believe as a comic to be exactly who you are. And anyway.
Yeah, I think comedy's best when it comes from a place of truth, and then you just embellish it for laughter, for comedic effect.
Yeah.
And then it's also, no one can take that from you. No one can take your act because it's you. Exactly. Most people can't do big hand jokes, and a lot of people can't do facial paralysis jokes. So, so we're good.
We got the market cornered.
Exactly. So do you remember your first show that you did?
Yes, I do. I've been wanting to try comedy for a long time. And I told a friend that, and I was working on material, and I was writing, and I was actually practicing that material, but I didn't have a game plan as to, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. I just was like, okay, here we go. And I remember getting a call from my friend's parents, and they said, hey, our comedian canceled. Would you fill in? It was like a corporate Christmas party out in Craik, Saskatchewan. And I was like, they said, we hear you're a comedian. And I was like, yes, I am. And it was like an hour. My first show was an hour, and it was
my.
the absolute train wreck. Just terrible. I couldn't even convince him now to let me go back there, probably. If I was like, I'll give you a free show. I've been doing this for 23 years. Here's my credits. I've done all this stuff. They'd be like, no, we don't trust you.
Yeah.
Because it was really bad. But I was hooked after that. I was like, I want to do this. And then I started doing it the right way, 5 minutes at a time on open mic stages and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my very first time was an hour-long corporate gig.
Corporate gigs are hard enough as it is when you've been doing it 20 years, let alone this is your first time on stage.
Yeah, it was not. Yeah. Well, I remember too, because I timed it out. It was about 50, 55 minutes. And I'm like, with intros and stuff, that's close enough. And I finished doing the whole thing, and I looked at my watch, and it was 35 minutes. And I was like, oh, I must have been rushing a bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So then I started to riff with the crowd. Hey, where are you from? For another, that was my closer. I'm from Crake. We're all from Crake. It's a small town. Where do you work? Co-op. We're all from Crake, and we all work at the co-op.
This is our corporate event.
This is a corporate event. You're an idiot. So yeah, that was rough. That was a rough show.
It's funny how when shows aren't going well, you just burn through material.
Yeah.
You'll do an hour's worth of material in about 40 minutes. Right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I had no idea that was even something that took place.
Right.
I hadn't done comedy, so I had no idea. I was just so stupid to think I could do that. But trial by fire, it was fun.
Exactly. So I guess I'll just get this one out of the way earlier. Was that your worst show ever, or did?
It's hard to be up there.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better, so
yeah.
I thought, hey, was this a good show? I think it was. I got some laughs. It was like, now I know better. It was like, no, that was just painful.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
So what was your worst show, if you can remember?
That's got to be up there. I don't. Yeah. I got lots. I've been bad at this for a long time.
Good, lots. Yeah, it's like a top 10 list. People go, okay, which one do you want?
It's funny what I'm comfortable in now, though, as compared to what I used to be comfortable in. I did a show at a club last year, a comedy club in Calgary, and their Tuesday nights, or their Tuesday to Sunday, and their Tuesday nights are just pretty dead. And it was the opening night. I just got in. There was 4 people, and they were like, "Do you want to do a show?" And my plan at the beginning of the week was I really want to work on some stuff. So I was like I didn't want to lose another night. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. And it was fun. There's 2 ladies sitting way back and a couple sitting close, and I just had them come in and sit down, and I sat at the edge of the stage, and we just started talking, and pretty soon it was a great show. And it was funny. What I said to him was, here's the problem. It's a good thing, but also a bad thing. I'm getting really good at doing small audiences. I've had a lot of practice at these small audiences, so I'm actually getting really good at it. So
yeah,
something to brag about.
Well, and I think one of the things with that, though, this is one of the biggest pet peeve I have of comics is they get into a room with a small crowd, whether it's 10, whether it's 20, whether it's 4, and they take it out on the audience. Right. And it's not the people who shows up fault. Like for me, I always say you get the same show, whether it's 5 or 500, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the volume and energy, like the energy is the same, the volume is toned down, and you know, there are techniques that we use to adjust to that, you know, maybe a little bit more talking as opposed to just flat out comedy, but you still give them a good show, and they're going to go home and go, that was like such a cool time. Even though there was 4 of us, we had such a good time. He was so good.
The best advice I ever got from a comic, whose name is Des Reed. He's the guy that kind of took me under his wing in Saskatchewan when I was starting. But he said to me, you can't want something from the crowd. The moment you want something from them, like I need to have your laughter or whatever, they know. And as you get better at masking that stuff, there's comics that want something from the audience, but you just don't know because they're so good at it. But it was a principle that really stuck in my head, as in, this is a service. We're providing a service. it's not about me. I'm just the guy that's providing this. You know what I mean? So that really changed how I looked at comedy. And that's why 400 people. I mean, I'd rather obviously do 400 people or 4,000 people.
Right.
40,000, maybe not so much. That gets a little, but 4,000, yeah, I'll take that any day. But it's still a service regardless. I'm still supposed to, do something. So I use the gifts that I have to, hey, well, here's something, listen to this. And here we go. That kind of mentality.
Yeah. I had that shift in my mentality after I got sick, because before it was all about me and, it was me. And then after it was like, okay, how can I give to the audience? It's about the audience. And like you said, once you get that shift, it makes really all the difference in the world, because then those smaller shows, I've done so many shows with people and I go, well, somebody needs to hear us tonight.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to laugh. So we might be the voice that they need to hear to get through their day or whatever. Because that's what started inspiring me when I was younger, because I've been watching stand-up since I was probably 10, when they allowed me to. And I just remember how it would take me away from whatever was going on. And I loved it. So I was like, if I can give that to somebody, then that's like the coolest thing ever. But that's really great advice, and I think a lot of people don't learn that until it's, well down the line.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of great practical advice out there, right? Like it's, stage time and all those kinds of fundamental, I guess, practical things. But this was a mental kind of bit of advice that it's like, wow, if I approach this way, it makes all the difference in the world. And I forget sometimes, right? And I get caught up in, and I think I noticed that,
Yeah.
I think they noticed the difference. So.
Yeah, you have to just kind of let that ego go, because if you don't, comedy will beat it out of you anyway. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can take pride into comedy if you want, but it won't be there at the end.
No, definitely not. So how long did it take for things to kind of start clicking for you on stage?
Well, I had some early success in Canada. Like I was doing, contests and things. I forget what actual year it was that I started, 96, maybe 96. And by 1999, I went to Just for Laughs festival, and some things like that. So I had early success, but it didn't really turn into anything. And I was like, why not? But stand-up wise, what's really true is I've heard people say you don't really find your voice till at least 7 years in. And I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You can have success and you can get things in career wise and all that kind of stuff, but you don't really find your stand-up comic voice until you're at least 7 years in. I don't know why that number. I don't know the science behind it, but I do really think it's true.
Yeah. And I think it can also evolve. You can find it again as life progresses. Yeah. But just to get back to Just for Laughs, for those who don't know what Just for Laughs is, will you just tell them a little bit about it?
So, I mean, things obviously change as time goes on, but it was the biggest comedy. It's probably still, number-wise, the biggest international comedy festival in the world. But it was also the place where guys would come and sign TV deals and all that. So back in 99 and 2001, I was kind of on the end of when that was, because reality TV kind of hit in and around there. Once reality hit, nobody was signing sitcom deals anymore. But and it's not that people didn't know who Ray Romano, Kevin James, Seinfeld were when they went to Just for Laughs. They already knew, but that's where they signed the deals.
Right.
They'd do the gala. They'd sit down after the gala because they're all there, all the network guys and stuff, and they're like, "Here's your deal." So it was a career maker for sure. I mean, so for me, 1999, 3 years into stand-up comedy, I got a sitcom pilot from that, a Canadian sitcom. They saw me one time. They saw me on stage one time. They approached me to audition for this Canadian sitcom thing, and I got it. And it didn't end up going anywhere, but I was going to be the Steve Urkel of Canada. I was a goofy character. This was my character. I auditioned, and then I went back and I'm like, oh, here's a bonus for you. Cause it was like, they didn't used to really do taped auditions, but I was like, I had to rent a camera and stuff. Like, but I did a version where I did a character, and the character sounded a lot like this. And he was Constable Bob, this RCMP. And they were just like, yeah, bring that character to the. So I flew to Toronto, and I ended up getting that. It was in Halifax, so the far west, east coast of Canada. But that didn't turn into anything. But 2 years later, 2001, I was back at Just for Laughs, and I signed with Industry Entertainment, who at the time were a production / management company out of LA. And they had, oh man, did they have a big roster, an amazing roster. So I was really excited because they were like, we're going to bring you back next year to this festival, and we're going to sign a $500,000 development deal. And I was like, sounds great. That would be awesome. And then that didn't happen. And here I am performing in front of 4 people a year later.
There you go. It's no, but Just for Laughs, it's still like one of the biggest festivals, and it's where people's careers go and they explode and take off. And so they for sure can. Yeah, it's big. Yeah, that just says so much that you landed it in 3 years and then went back in another 2 years. Like, that's such a, it's just a credit to you and your hard work.
And then there was a 10-year gap before I went back.
Well, you're no longer new talent. Now you're.
Well, that's you know what? That's a big part of it. We want the fresh face. What's the fresh faces? Oh, this is great. Oh, old guys. We'll see if we can find a place for you. Yeah. Right. But
hey, you take it, right?
I'll take that place. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what is your writing process like when you're coming up with stuff?
I write a lot on stage. It's also changed a lot too. Mm-hmm. Early on, especially the Just for Laughs era, when I was Just for Laughs, and those, you needed that tight 7. You know what I mean? And I was always just perfecting that tight 7. How do we do this? How do we, and it was all set up, punch tag, set up, punch tag, set up, punch tag, hands, set up, punch tag. But I've changed more into more of a storyteller. I wasn't a huge fan of storytellers when I was coming up in stand-up. Like, that wasn't my, I love these storytelling. They're my favorite comedians. That wasn't my favorite kind of comedian, but it was more of who I was. So that kind of morphed. Again, that's that 7 years in. Now all of a sudden I'm more of a storyteller. I still like to obviously have those laughs, that laughs per minute be high. Like, I still want that bop, 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 right? But yeah, so it's morphed. So that changed the way I wrote a little bit too. I do write a lot on stage. That's why this pandemic thing has been really hard, because I really do enjoy that feedback from an audience as I'm working on a bit. It comes a lot quicker now. I already kind of know. I kind of know where this is going to go, because I understand now better what an audience likes. But there's still stuff that you play with in there. There's still stuff, there's some bits by Dane Cook. And this is an old example, but I was listening to him one time, and I actually didn't used to watch a lot of stand-up comedy because I didn't want to be influenced. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I don't want to sit here and watch hours of other comic stuff. But I remember going back and watching some of his stuff, and you could tell what parts of his bit were, he just did that on stage and that worked. So now he does that all the time. And you can tell in my act too, if you're watching something and all of a sudden I'm like, I made a mistake or something and I have all these extra lines. It's like, I've made mistakes and had some lines that hit, but maybe not that many. Yeah. I'm not that quick. Right. But that's a part of my writing process is just kind of playing with stuff. I like to think I'm quick. But sometimes it takes that live interaction to bring some of that out. But I will. So I'll come up with a concept. I'll write it down. I'll practice it. Like, I'll get down like I'm at a show. I'll do pretend shows and just work the material until it's ready. And then I get it on stage and really work it. So.
But when you talk about the looking like you're just coming up with something, it's like that too when with heckles or that sort of stuff, or you come up and you go, oh, I could have said this on the drive home, and you go, next time that happens, I got this line now. So
everybody out there is not a comedian listening to this. Every time you've driven home and said, I could have said this line. We do that too. We just go back on stage and do it the next day. That's
right. We go back and then you mess up so that you can go ahead and say that to get it. That's sometimes when things happen, or if someone does heckle you, you have that in your back pocket and you're like, here you go. But yeah, it's an interesting process writing on stage. Let's get back to the storytelling really quickly, the aspect of that, because what I hear so many comics say, I'm a storyteller, and that's their excuse for not having punchlines. And so,
it's the same for me.
Yeah. How do you go about, for someone who says to be a storyteller comic, can you please give a little bit of what you consider that to be as far as?
Well, so let me put it to you like this. I started doing a YouTube channel. I've had a YouTube channel for like 12 years, but during this pandemic, I decided I need to start doing more than once a year, some old stand-up clip. And I started to tell stories because I've got all these stories, some from childhood, some from 2 weeks ago. But the YouTube channel, I can edit some stuff and add some things and maybe add some clips to kind of juice, you know what I mean? But those aren't ready for stage.
Right.
Whereas for me, I start to tell a story. This is the part about me being me. Because I like to tell stories, and I like to, the moment I go into that, there's always this passion that comes with a story. And anytime I'm passionate about it, I think that's when audiences are like, oh, okay, so what happened next? What, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beauty of storytelling for me is that I, first of all, I have that passion. They know what I'm saying is how I feel about it. But yeah, you got to have the laughs per minute. So for me, I map out a story and I put in where I think here's some definitely some, and sometimes it's a tangent. Sometimes it's like the story's going this way and I'm like, let me just quickly add this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all fine. And if I can tighten that up real nice, then all of a sudden I put it back together with that same story. And it's like, okay, now we've really got the laughs per minute kind of thing. But yeah, I'll just play with it. These are real stories from my life with some of my exaggerations and some of my, to me, the story is never exactly as it happened because that's why I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm not, I forget what the guy's name is in the US, but in Canada, Stuart McLean is the storyteller with what's the NPR guy?
I don't know. Yeah.
Garrett Wheeler? No, Garrett Wheeler. He's like a soccer guy in Canada. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So it's, I don't even know what the question was.
Well, we were just talking about storytelling and getting the laughs per minute with that. Yeah. Like on a technical side of it, I always just say, does this have anything to do with the story? Like the punchline, getting to that point,
Yeah.
Do we need to hear about you eating breakfast when it's about you doing something at dinner? Like, unless
and I do think that's why early on in my stand-up career, if I was to do storytelling then, I don't think it would have been nearly as good. But because I developed my stand-up voice, the physicality that I add, now when I start to tell a story, I'm coming from a very different place. Like I know already what I'm going to be adding to this thing, how I'm going to build this up into the moment. I know all those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, I've been doing some acting. You mentioned some stuff, but I realize now that that's part of what's developed the acting part for me too, is that I like telling stories.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand some of that and how it doesn't mean I'm great at it, but I understand it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. And if you want to hear some of Leland's stories on YouTube, You can do you like how I did that? You can follow him. Well, actually, you can follow him on Instagram and Facebook at Leland.Klassen. That's Leland.Klassen, Klassen. Or you can follow him on Twitter and YouTube at Leland Klassen, all one word.
No dots. No dots on the YouTube.
No dots. They don't allow the dots.
I don't know why I did it differently, but
it's hard. Sometimes people take that from you.
Yeah.
But and just with the storytelling aspect, I don't know if Larry, I don't know if you ever heard Larry Miller's, I talk about this because I just think it's amazing. Larry Miller's Secret of Skiing, stand up.
I vaguely do. Yeah.
It's a 35-minute bit about his trip skiing. And I'm not even joking. There is a punchline every 10 seconds. Yeah. It's absolutely phenomenal. So whenever someone says, "Oh, I'm a storyteller," go listen to that. Because that's, you still get that laughs per minute, but you're also taking them somewhere.
It
goes off on the tangent like you're talking about and comes right back. And, it's brilliant. And sorry, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do like that there's a beginning and end to a bit, but along the way, we're going to have a whole bunch of fun. And I do think it can be, I think you're right. Some comics use that as, I can be lazy and not, storytelling comics, people that say I write on stage, that's pretty lazy.
Yeah.
I get that. I have been lazy in the past. That's probably how I started doing storytelling, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, that's fine. Well, I think, from an audience standpoint, I always talk about, I think that the audience is going to trust you that first time. And if you take them on a story that has no real ending and it wasn't worth their time, they're not following you again.
Yeah, like my YouTube channel.
At Leland Klassen. So, yeah, I just always think that's such an interesting dynamic when people say that. So what is one of the biggest mistakes you've seen comedians make?
Biggest mistake?
Or like young comedians anyway.
I think it's a mistake that I made too. And that's just always thinking you're ready for something when you're not yet. Like, it's one of the most painful things to hear somebody say you're not ready. Of course I'm ready. I'm way funnier than this guy. He's been doing it. But it's like, but you're not ready.
Right.
And so that's probably the most, I don't know if it's the biggest problem I see with young comics, but I think it's definitely the most prevalent, is that there's comics that it's like, I see some guys and they're great. They're killing it up there. But I'm like, you haven't even found your voice yet. You sound like 3 different comics right now. Because you don't know what your own voice is, and you've got influences, and you sound like all 3 of those influences, and they're this guy, and this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they're like, yeah, I like all those. Yeah, I know.
We can tell.
I can hear it in your act. So yeah, I think that's it. People wanting to do things before they're ready. I mean, we all are like that, right? You hear a comic doing a thing, and you're like, I should be doing that thing. They're doing a thing? I'm a comic. I should do that thing. And sometimes it doesn't fit us either.
Right.
It's not even sometimes being ready. It's maybe that's not a fit for you. Leland, the all women's show on HBO. That's not you, Leland.
Right. Right.
I can talk about women things.
Exactly. Like, yeah.
It's not for you. And it's okay to miss opportunities because it wasn't for you, Yeah.
And it's just being ready for when your time does show up. But yeah, I remember starting, I was like 7 different comics on stage. I was just like, all right, I'm going to take some Chris Farley, and I'm going to take some John Candy, and I'm going to take some, Jim Gaffigan and Brian Regan and some Cosby. And so I was not me on stage, that's for sure. And it takes a while to kind of get out of that. What other advice would you have for maybe some aspiring comedians?
Oh, wow. Other advice.
At least from a writing perspective, like how often should you write? How often do you write?
With this YouTube channel, I've been doing, that's really kind of helped me in writing, because I'm making sure specifically to have a certain amount done. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying all this is gold. But there's already a few stories that I'm like, I got to get that on stage because I think that's really going to work. And it might take a while to get it working. But yeah, just going through that motion. I also am been writing some scripts lately too, and I think that all that helps. Like anytime you're being creative, I think that just all that helps. So it's a matter of doing it, and I'm the worst guy about that because until this pandemic, and even in the first couple weeks of it, I was just like, I can't do anything. I'm too troubled right now. But yeah, do it.
There you go. That's there should be a company that uses that as a slogan.
You should.
You should definitely. So what is the difference? Is there a difference between Canadian audiences and American audiences?
I think anytime, you and I travel. So, regionally, you'll notice little differences in the US, and it's the same within Canada, different regions of Canada. It's very similar in that there's just pockets that are just a little different everywhere. I haven't noticed a huge difference between Canada and the US just because we're so closely linked culturally. We watch the same culturally, we watch the same movies and TV. And so we're very similar. I mean, there's some things that are a little different, but you get into some regions in the US and you notice the same differences. So I know that's a big, long answer that said nothing.
No, it's
true.
Yeah. Now you work clean, and do you feel that the term clean comic gets a bad rap?
Yeah. Again, me working clean has to do with me being me on stage. You know what I mean? So it's not like I don't know. The same philosophy that I said earlier about you got to be who you are. That's why I do it the way I do it. And sometimes I'm at a club and people, they don't even really notice.
Right.
And that's great. I love that. Some people will notice and they're like, hey, you weren't cussing at all. You didn't talk about anything. So I was like, oh yeah, no. So I enjoy both those responses. But yeah, no, I've always done it this way. So I don't really know what it's like to not do it that way.
Right.
So comparison wise, I can't personally compare the difference, but I see other comics and stuff. And, they got to be them too, right? So
right.
I respect that. But yeah, as far as clean comedians go, I think we do the same way that a Christian comic, which I'm called a lot as well. There's a bunch of, I know what that means. You know what I mean? You're cheap, corny. I think they get the same rap. And it's not like that's because there isn't any cheesy, corny comics out there. Sure, there are.
Yeah.
That's how that started.
Yep.
But I can only do me. So
right.
I can hopefully break that down in their minds. Individual performances, 4 people at a time.
That's right.
Change their minds on clean comedy.
Well, I think I think that's a really interesting aspect of it because as I always say, Brian Regan's clean. He's hysterical. Jerry Seinfeld's clean. He's hysterical. So it's just like you said, there are a lot of corny, cheesy, terrible, clean comics out there, and it's like, well, you're clean. You're not necessarily a comic at this point. So
you get the clean part down.
Yeah, you get that part down. Let's work on the comedy, and I like the challenge of having it work on a late show on a Saturday and not having to change a word. Like I love that challenge of it. And if you can sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and there are some people that they don't want clean.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I've done a comedy club. One time I was doing this show in Toronto. It was the Laugh Resort or something like that. And there's a lady in there and she just had this look on her face of just like, she was just so disappointed in the show. And I just said to her at one point in time, I'm like, were you hoping this was going to be a little dirtier? And she was like, yep. Like, being honest, right? And I was like, well, this is how I do it. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. And she was like, well, she was like, I just don't enjoy this. And I'm like, fair enough. That's what happens.
Yeah. And it's hard to accept that not everybody's going to like your material.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you know, that it's funny because I was talking to somebody the other day about Drybar and looking at the comments page on Drybar. And it's like, oh yeah, this is great. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's some really mean things on there every once in a while. And it's just like, and it takes so many good things to overcome that. So after a while, it's like, you know what? I'm going to stop looking at these comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I can still grow as an artist and not have to hear some of this.
Absolutely. Now, when did you film yours? Last year? You've done 2, right?
No,
I've done 2.
One. I did the first season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I saw they were posting the videos from that as recently as like November of last year. So
yeah, they've also just posted my full one in November of 2019, and then little clips, and then they redo clips. Some people were complaining about that. Don't try to pass this off. I've seen the same job. It's like, hey, get mad at me.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to when my special comes out to see the comments. I'll tell you that.
So. When is yours coming out?
Hopefully soon. I filmed it in January, and they said it could be 3 weeks to a year. I was like, thank you. And then of course the pandemic hit, but I know they're putting stuff out now. They just released John Brannion's this week, actually like yesterday, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm like, okay, and now I know. And he was like 3 months ahead of me, so I'm hoping it's not 3 months. I hope it's a little sooner, but I'm not looking forward to the comment section of it. But you know, again, you want to be liked. We do this because we want to give, and we want people to enjoy us. And
you forget that, and you want to be appreciated for what you do, at least, right?
Yeah.
But I will say this though, man, times have sure changed. It's like that first one they put on Facebook of Drybar for me got like 3 million views, and I was like, wow, it's viral. Is that viral? Does that mean I'm a hit now? And everyone's like, no, that means nothing anymore.
Yeah. Wow.
Try 40 million. That's where you got to be. It's like, okay. So
you're getting there. That's interesting. So what Drybar, you have to be clean, just for everyone to know. It's a great organization. They do a lot of good stuff with it. So what kind of got you into doing, you do a lot of charity shows, and you do a lot of church shows and things of that nature where you give back. What got you into doing comedy shows for that?
I mean, I think that was a more gradual thing.
Yeah.
That happened for me. I got my paperwork to start working in the US as a Canadian. I can't just cross the border and do comedy. I got to get a work visa. And once I got that, a lot of what opened up to me was church shows. And so I got more and more calls to do those kinds of events, and it just kind of grows, right? You do some events, and then word spreads, and then you do more events like that. And so I also did a lot of tour, mainly in Canada. I did some tours of churches because I was like, you know what, maybe I'll do some shows and, kind of make an outreach event, an event that maybe folks who wouldn't normally feel comfortable coming would come and have a night of laughter. And the churches were like, that's a good idea. We like to give to the community. We like to do things like that. Let's have you come in. So I started to kind of create more of those opportunities as well. And it just, I'd say snowballed, but that sounds like it happened really fast.
Yeah.
So it didn't quite snowball, but it built eventually.
Right.
I guess.
Well, and actually, that's how this whole podcast came about. Was me and 3 other comics were putting together shows that we could take around the country and whatever, and they were all going to be based on fundraising and charity and nice. Hitting up like churches and to help like promote those and give back. And then as soon as we just got everything like ready to roll and we're just putting out all this stuff, pandemic hit, and I'm like, all right, let's shut that down. So I'm like, I'll just work on a podcast now that kind of is the same, same feel. We're talking about comedy. We're talking about laughter and charity and giving back to people. And let's talk a little bit about an organization that you like to work with. You work with, so many of them, but you pick one for us today to talk about.
Yeah, I've got a lot of, like you said, there's been a lot of tours that I've been on over the years, and we've had some just awesome organizations. But the one I was talking about today, and I'm even wearing the shirt, I'll join you in the area. New Missions. It's based out of Orlando, and they work in primarily Haiti, but now into the Dominican as well because it's on the same island. And I'll tell you, I took a trip to Haiti. This is before even the big earthquake. So this is a number of years ago now. And I've since been to Senegal, I've been to Colombia, and I've seen with some other organizations. And I don't know how to say this in a way that it sounds, I don't mean this in any kind of, I'll just tell it and then you can judge for yourself. I'm a horrible person. I was in Colombia and I remember the guy there saying, "Hey, pretty rough to see, huh? Is this hard to see?" And I was like, "Dude, I've been to Haiti. This is nothing." Like when you start out in Haiti as the place to see poverty, it's really tough to find poverty worse. It's the third worst, poorest country in the world. It's the first poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. There are things that are rough to see when you go to Haiti, and New Missions is just they're going into and they're actually building schools, they're building clinics, they're building churches as well. They're digging wells, and it changes. It's amazing when you do a few of those kinds of things. It just changes everything. Clean drinking water, something that us North Americans just take for granted. It changes their life. It changes the generation to come with a well. Do you know what I mean? Like it's amazing to see. I guess that's why I'm so impressed with New Missions. Is they've been around, I forget how many years they've been around now, but now you see generations of families that have been affected and like for the better. And they're coming, and they're not just leaving. They got an education. They can go somewhere else. They come back to the community and they pour back in because they want to see it grow and change even more. And that's the one thing that this pandemic has really changed with all these organizations. I'm hearing that it's setting a lot of these organizations back in the work that they were doing like 20 years.
Wow.
Like so much growth has happened over the last 20 years, and it's like we're changing. We're when I was starting out, you'd hear numbers like 26,000 kids were dying every day. And as the years going with certain organizations, you start to hear the numbers, and they were less and less. And I was like, is anyone else realizing that we just said 15,000 instead of 26? We're making a difference.
Right.
And that's where you get excited. But now once this pandemic has hit, you can't stay at home and not work when you're getting paid daily. And then you're taking that and you're going down to the market to buy food for that day. You can't sit home for 2 days.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's anyway, I didn't mean to bring it all down.
No, it's
but that's why New Missions is really important.
Yeah. Well, they're a great sounds like a great organization, and you can check them out at newmissions.org. And definitely, if you can donate and give or volunteer, anything you can do, please do so.
Sponsor a child.
Yeah, you can sponsor a child. Okay. And then
send a shoebox. Yeah. Sorry. I keep interrupting.
Okay. Oh, no, it just kind of cut out there for a second. So it's all good. And then if you want to check out Leland and see when he's going to be coming back out on tour, it is Leland Klassen, again, LelandKlassen.com. And Leland, you also have a movie out there that you did in 2017. Do you want to just give a quick plug for that?
Well, 2017, I did, maybe it's 2016, I did Extraordinary, which is the running movie. But last year, I did a movie called Sleeper Agent, and it's a comedy that I co-wrote. And that is coming very, very soon now. We should be available for transactional video on demand, like on Amazon and some of those, probably in a couple weeks.
That's awesome.
So sleeperagentmovie.com. You can also just Sleeper Agent Movie on Facebook, and you'll find us there as well.
Sleeperagentmovie.com. So check that out. And one last time, One last time, you can follow Leland on Instagram and Facebook at Leland.Klassen, and then Twitter and YouTube is just Leland Klassen. And Leland, thank you so much for coming today, or not coming today, but just hanging out today and sharing your wisdom and your passion and your knowledge. And so glad to have you, and looking forward to talking again soon. We'll talk some curling, and we'll talk some some Randy Furby, and it'll be a good time. And hope to get to work with you and help out some people soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate you.